Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, will be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you have all had a good Wednesday. If you were with us this morning for our live coverage of the Starlink 9-9 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base, welcome back. If this is your first time with us today for live launch coverage, welcome in. We are joined by our usual gang today, our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our photographer, Adam Bernstein, is preparing to shoot the rocket for us, as well as do some still photography. Our photographer, Michael Kane, has this evening off. We'll also be joined by our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. As we are getting rolling this afternoon, I want to thank the 1,000 of you plus who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, certainly appreciate it if you could do us a big favor and hit that like button for us. It allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and bring some more folks into our live launch coverage. I also want to thank our wonderful channel member community here that's supporting us with our live launch coverage today. Certainly can't do these broadcasts without the support of all of y'all. So thanks to folks like the Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch, Cumulus Granatus, James Fowley, Mark Potochuknik, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos, and of course, the ability to watch all of our launch liftoff moments in 4K. I also want to thank moderator Astro Joe for stopping by with us today. Good to see you, Astro Joe. Hope you're doing well. If you do see the other mods popping into the live chat, be sure to give them a big old hello. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or other happenings in the realm of spaceflight, you can go ahead and use that YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about during the duration of this coverage, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And that, as always, is much appreciated. We're currently T minus 54 minutes, 54 seconds and counting to the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket you see there on your screen. Standing tall in the middle of Slick 40, that is Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX looking to, as mentioned in our tweet, make its second Falcon flight of the day, second batch of Starlink satellites. No direct-to-cell Starlinks on board this flight. That's all right. There are 23 perfectly good Starlinks adding to the mega constellation already on orbit. This mission's set to be the 71st dedicated flight of Starlink satellites up to low Earth orbit so far for SpaceX this year. This will also be the 134th time that SpaceX has launched the V2 Mini variety of these satellites. Departure from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station is set for 5:10 p.m. Eastern this evening. That is 21:10 UTC for our friends joining around the world. We'll show the trajectory of the mission with a little more detail in a few minutes here, but broadly speaking, the rocket will be heading in a northeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad. Got some good views around the Space Coast, giving you eyes on the Falcon 9 rocket here. If we can go to the wide water shot, Stephen, just to give folks an idea of what the atmosphere is like here. A little bit of choppy waters. It's a bit of a blustery day here on Florida's Space Coast. If you can tell by the bush, the right-hand side of your screen, the waves in the turn basin here at the press site. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 75% chance of good weather conditions for liftoff today during the launch window, which currently, again, SpaceX is targeting liftoff at the opening of the window at 5:10 p.m. Eastern. However, if they do need more time and they have not started fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, they can punt the fueling process and the launch itself until liftoff as late as 9:08 p.m. Eastern. That's 01:08 UTC on October 31st at the end of the window. If for whatever reason SpaceX does need to stand down altogether today for either weather-related reasons or there's a technical issue that comes up on the rocket or the ground systems, they do have another backup opportunity that is October 31st, Halloween for all who celebrate. Hope you've all got your costumes planned. If you're going out and do something fun, whether that's heading to a downtown area for a Halloween party, or if you're a parent taking your kids trick-or-treating, or if you are of trick-or-treating age. Hope you all have a fun and safe Halloween tomorrow. Let us know in the live chat if you are dressing up, what your costume is. Obviously, recognizing that that this broadcast is for wide viewership, so please keep it PG if your costume is a little more on the risque side. Now, currently T minus 51 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. As SpaceX is getting ready to launch this Falcon 9 rocket in 51 minutes from now, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline and some of the milestones that are coming up before they get to the point of being ready to launch this Falcon 9. As is always the case, the fueling process starts with SpaceX launch director giving the go-ahead for the start of fueling. See that AstroGen has joined us. Good evening, AstroGen. SpaceX does an electronic poll to get ready for fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. If they're in a good position to do so, they can take that a little bit early, but about T minus 38 minutes is the nominal time for that. If that go-ahead is given, prop load begins at T minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP1, or rocket-grade kerosene. That gets loaded on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen starts flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T minus 30 minutes is when they start loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon's first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will be true on the second stage, about 4 or so minutes after that. T minus 23 minutes, SpaceX begins or concludes loading of RP1 on the second stage of the Falcon 9. That's followed up at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds when the strong back chill down process begins. This is when SpaceX is chilling the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. That's evidenced visually when we see the so-called big vent come up at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. That venting lasts until just about T minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. SpaceX prepares to flip over to second stage LOX load, which begins at T minus 16 minutes. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps and helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence. That's when the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, the strong back, will recline about a degree and a half away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff, which point pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute or so later, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. You'll hear that they say the Falcon 9 is in startup. SpaceX launch director, the SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And of course, if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the bird to begin its flight. T0. It's again coming up at 5:10 p.m. Eastern, 21:10 UTC, or T minus 47 minutes and 8 seconds. Taking a look here at our local weather data that we have stationed here at the press site, you can see winds currently clocking in at 13.7 miles per hour. Most recent gust checking in at 23.6 miles per hour. Referring back to the forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron, they were forecasting liftoff winds of anywhere between 20 and 28 miles per hour with this launch. So these numbers do fall certainly within expectations from those meteorologists. Our local weather data updates about every 5 minutes or so. So we'll be sure to keep an eye on this as we continue on through the count, since liftoff winds are one of the watch items that are being clocked by launch weather officers with the 45th Weather Squadron. Other things of note in the preparation process for this launch, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has officially activated their launch operations support team. One of the busiest DOCs in the country is the Brevards, and that's because they do activate for any and all launch operations here at the Cape. So between SpaceX and the other launch providers here, they're kept quite busy throughout the year. And that's not even speaking of the duties that they perform outside of supporting the space industry. Of course, we are still in the midst of hurricane season here in Florida, so they tend to be busy around this time of year in a non-space sense. Now T minus 44 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. SpaceX, of course, has been busy today. Taking a look at the bar chart where it currently stands of Falcon missions on the year, they have notched 104 Falcon family launches so far. That includes Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy launches up to this point in 2024. Looking to add the 105th in just 44 minutes and 26 seconds. We're now currently T minus 43 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. Want to welcome on in Callistia Lee, another one of our wonderful moderators joining us today. And putting on a moderator hat also is one of our photographers, Michael Kane. So be sure to give them both a big old hello. And I was just notified that Michael is also shooting the launch today. So be sure to look for both his and Adam's work post launch. You can find them at their social handles on X. Adam is at MD Kane, or excuse me, Michael's at MD Kane Jr. Adam is at A Burn NYC. You can also follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now on X, as well as Threads, as well as Facebook. Also want to thank another one of our channel members, Chuck Close, for a very generous $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck. Good to see you this afternoon slash early evening, sir. Now T minus 41 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. As Michael noted for folks in the live chat, and as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, this rocket is flying in a northeasterly trajectory, but let's go ahead and speak with a little more specificity and give you a visual idea of what that actually means. T0, the Falcon 9, set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The rocket will be flying again in a northeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad. So for folks in the northeast part of Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, if the lighting's right, you may be able to catch a glimpse of the Falcon 9 heading off from Florida's Space Coast. Following stage separation, the first stage booster is set to touch down on the drone ship called a short fall of gravitas. If successful, this will be the 83rd booster landing for the short fall of gravitas, as well as the 361st booster landing. Big part of SpaceX's business model, of course, is to recover not only the first stage booster, but also the payload fairings. And so they will float down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of parachutes. SpaceX noted that they save about $6 million per recovery effort. So it is an important part of their business model to scoop those up out of the water, refurbish them, and turn them around for future flights whenever possible. They do so with the aid of their recovery vessels, like the one you see pictured here on the screen in the big box. We're now T minus 39 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. SpaceX is preparing to give the go ahead to start fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, assuming that it doesn't need more time to do so here today. Again, liftoff still targeting 5:10 p.m. Eastern, 21:10 UTC. If that go ahead is given, fueling is set to start now just a hair under 4 minutes from now. Now T minus 36 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Taking another look at our weather data here. See the most recent wind speeds have ticked up just a bit. Most recent gust clocked in at 23.6 miles per hour. Currently T minus 35 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank the more than 2,300 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way into this live coverage. As we cruise on in towards the last 35 minutes of the count, SpaceX just getting ready to start fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, assuming all still is remaining on track with this mission. It appears that they are still targeting a 5:10 p.m. liftoff time today, which means the start of fueling is imminent. As we look at a zoomed in view of the rocket, again, well, just note that it is quite blustery today as we read you off the weather data just a few seconds ago. But if you look near the base of the Falcon 9 rocket, just above the tree line, you see there's a bit of a lighter horizontal gray band near the base of the first stage. That's where we'll be looking for some visual signs of fueling. It's where the frost ring tends to form, given the fact that the Florida air here is considerably warmer than the super cold densified liquid oxygen that'll be flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. A little bit of vapor will form as well as the frost that we'll see. That'll be a good visual indication that fueling is underway as we await official word from SpaceX to that fact. Now T minus 33 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX should be fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, and we should see some evidence of that in the next minute or two here. So we'll continue to watch that part of the Falcon 9 that I mentioned. In the meantime, it has been a busy day, not only in space flight, but specifically on the Space Coast, as not only was SpaceX getting ready for the launch you see here on your screen, but Blue Origin also busily preparing for its first flight of its New Glenn rocket. This image shared by Blue Origin of the first stage booster being rolled into the hangar there at Launch Complex 36 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And as you can see in what's lovingly referred to as the business end of the rocket, you see 7 BE-4 engines that'll support both the launch and, yes, the landing, or at least the landing attempt of this first stage booster on the recovery vessel that Blue Origin is named Jacqueline, after Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos' mother of the same name. Now, this rocket happened to roll out in the middle of the night or in the very early morning. This video that we shot here showing the Blue Origin New Glenn first stage booster as it rolled by the vehicle assembly building from the vantage point of our cameras here at the press site. As we're getting closer to the launch of this rocket, the New Glenn, we are also looking to expand our capabilities to cover not only the Falcon missions that we have, but also some very exciting missions from Blue Origin using its New Glenn rocket. And that will take some additional gear and some additional infrastructure to make that happen. So if you'd like to see more expansive coverage that includes New Glenn in all of the ways you've grown accustomed to seeing Falcon 9 coverage here at Spaceflight Now, we could certainly use your help in doing so. It's a good time to become a channel member here on the YouTube channel. And as always, the super chats are a good way to support for those who, whether you're our channel member or not, what we do here at Spaceflight Now, since unfortunately the infrastructure and getting the equipment ready for this launch coverage is not a simpler or unfortunately a cheap venture. And so, and help that you can and making this a reality would be very much appreciated as we look forward to bringing you robust coverage of not only the first mission of New Glenn, but investing for the long term to bring you the best coverage possible of this particular launch program. And we certainly thank you for your support, as always. Now, T minus 30 minutes, 31 seconds and counting to the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. As you can see at the base of the Falcon vehicle, there's some vapor around the first stage, a little bit of a frost ring forming, as I was suggesting that there would be. This is a good visual indication that SpaceX is, in fact, fueling its Falcon 9 rocket and preparing for a launch. The fact that they have started loading RP-1 on board the first and second stages and the liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage means that SpaceX is targeting the opening of the window today, again, that being 5:10 p.m. Eastern, 21:10 UTC. If at this point something were to come up, whether it be a technical issue or just the weather is not cooperative, then SpaceX would need to turn around to its backup opportunity on Thursday, October 31st, with a window that opens up at 5:07 p.m. Now, 29 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX is also beginning to load cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank the astronomers for a $10 super chat. Appreciate you, the astronomers, who say happy Halloween and let's go Spaceflight Now, team. Best in the biz. Well, that's very kind of you, the astronomers. Really appreciate your support and those kind words. I also want to thank Grandpa Jim Pondu for being a channel member for 4 months. Really appreciate that, Grandpa Jim, who says go SpaceX. And Patty Chichio with a $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Patty, who says Spaceflight Now, best coverage. And I will second this, best mods and crew. Thank you. I would certainly agree. We have a great collection of folks that make Spaceflight Now what it is. Certainly a privilege to work alongside them. Now, T minus 27 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. This booster that's flying today, tail number 1078 in the SpaceX fleet, is going to be making its 14th flight in a little less than 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and talk about its history, the missions that it's got so far, before it goes ahead and notches number 14. Its flight history began, as a number of boosters tend to, with the launch of 3 astronauts and a cosmonaut on board the Crew Dragon Endeavour on the Crew 6 mission that lifted off on March 2nd of 2023. Crew Dragon Endeavour, of course, just recently coming back from the space station with the astronauts and cosmonaut of the Crew 8 mission. Next up for this booster was the launch of the O3B mPOWER 3 and 4 satellites back on April 28th of 2023. It then launched into Starlink land with the liftoff of Starlink 6-4 on June 4th, Starlink 6-8 on August 7th, 6-16 on September 16th, 6-31 on December 3rd. It's followed by National Security Mission USSF 124 on Valentine's Day, February 14th of this year. Following that up, we're pretty much in Starlink land from then to now, with one exception, which we'll get to just a moment here. Before we got to that point, we hit Starlink Group 6-46 on March 25th, 6-53 on April 23rd, 6-60 on May 28th, 10-2 on June 23rd, and Starlink 10-6 on August 2nd. Most recently for this Falcon booster was a launch for the company AST Space Mobile and their first 5 Bluebird satellites. This Bluebird Block 1 mission lifting off on September 12th of 2024. Of course, AST Space Mobile announcing just earlier this month that they've finished unfolding all of those Bluebird satellites and are beginning to move into an operational phase. Those satellites providing, similar to the Starlink direct-to-cell capability, but a little bit more robust, I believe, the ability to connect to telecom services from these series of satellites on orbit. Now, T-minus 24 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. Now, T-minus 23 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. Do want to make one more note on the Blue Origin first stage here, since we just got a posting from Blue Origin CEO Dave Limp, who notes that following the move of the booster out to Launch Complex 36 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, he says, and I'll quote, "Up next, integrated launch vehicle hot fire." So lots happening out at the Cape, and we look forward to covering all of that for you as it happens. And again, your support here at Spaceflight Now, especially with adding new launch coverage capability and ideally the ability to keep our eyes on Pad 36 in the way that we do for Launch Complex 39A, is something we're very much looking forward to, and we'll need your support to help make that happen. So growing our channel member community is a good way to do that. You can also upgrade your channel membership as well. And we're always looking for ways to improve the experience of our channel members here on YouTube. So if you're not already participating in our Discord community, go ahead and hop on over there if you're one of our channel members. We would love to hear from you on some things that you'd like to see at Spaceflight Now. We can have some discussions behind the scenes about ways to make this community even better for all of y'all. Now, T minus 21 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. We're just now a minute away from the point in which we will enter into the strong back chill down, which we'll get visual evidence of that about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds with the so-called big vent. There you see now T minus 20 minutes, 14 seconds and counting, the big vent now getting right underway. This will continue until about T minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds, setting up for a second stage liquid oxygen load at just about T minus 16 minutes. We're now T minus 16 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. The big vent tapering off, and SpaceX is preparing to pivot over to second stage LOX load. We're now T minus 15 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX is loading that liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's second stage. As SpaceX is preparing to launch its workhorse vehicle, let's go ahead and take a moment and talk about the Falcon 9 rocket as it prepares to take flight. The vehicle itself stands a total of 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage, the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. Again, the Falcon booster flying on this mission, tail number B1078, going for its 14th flight today. The base of the first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. The one they're using today is called a shortfall of gravitas. Above the Falcon's first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 rocket as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. And at first stage main engine cutoff, high pressure helium is used to release those latches, and pneumatic pushers ensure clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, that being RP1 and LOX, same as the first stage. Following spacecraft separation, the deployment of those Starlink satellites, the upper stage will ignite for a third time as a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings. They're encapsulating the 23 Starlink satellites made up of a carbon composite material. They stand together at 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. Two fairing halves will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, and they gently splash down under parachutes. Once they're recovered, they'll be brought back to Port Canaveral and then, of course, brought out to Cape Canaveral, where SpaceX will endeavor to refurbish them and turn them around for future flights. SpaceX working to certify both its boosters and its payload fairings for up to 40 missions each. As it currently stands, the launch leader for SpaceX as far as boosters are concerned, of the boosters that are still flying, that distinction belongs to the booster tail number B1067, having made its most recent launch back on September 17th. It has flown 22 times. The most SpaceX has flown a booster. That designation belongs to B1061 and B1062, which each made their final flight on their 23rd outing. Now currently T minus 10 minutes on the dot. As you can see, the wind speeds have calmed down a good bit. Noticing a bit less bounce in the camera, though it is jumping around a little bit. Now, of course, that I've called it out. Wind speeds, though, 10.6 miles per hour as a constant wind speed, with gusts currently clocking most recently at 18 miles per hour. Bit of a dip down from the 23 that we saw earlier in the broadcast. So directionally heading in the way that is more ideal for a launch. Not that this is too blustery for a liftoff, but calmer winds are always preferable to the alternative. One less thing to worry about. Now T minus 9 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. We're just about 2 minutes away from the point in which SpaceX begins the engine chill-down sequence. Of course, our weather system here at the press site updates about every 5 minutes or so. You can see the current wind speeds now of 12.4 miles per hour. Gusts now ticked up just a bit to 19.9 miles per hour. Now 8 minutes to liftoff. We're now T minus 6 minutes and counting. At this point, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. We're just about a minute or so away from getting pad views of the Falcon 9 rocket and getting some mission audio as well. As we approach that milestone, I want to thank the now more than 15,000 of you who are joining with us live this afternoon or early evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. Allow some folks to find their way into this live stream as we cruise on into the final handful of minutes before the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Also want to thank one of our fabulous moderators, Mark Otto, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Appreciate you, Mark. And to our newest 5 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Mark in the live chat if you haven't already. We hope you stick around with the channel membership. Now T minus 4 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. In less than 30 seconds, we'll be seeing the strong back retract sequence begin. As we are now getting pad views of the Falcon 9 rocket.
Strong back lower has started.
Good call there from SpaceX for the beginning of the strong back retract. See the clamp arms now opening up, and the transporter erector of the strong back will recline now about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. Now about 3.5 minutes to that point of launch. As a quick bit of housekeeping, actually, if we can go back to the multi-view for a second, you can see there is a slight difference between our countdown clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen and what you're seeing there from the SpaceX pad view. Our clock is in real time. What you're seeing there from the SpaceX feed is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our callouts based off of real time for the first section of this flight, as long as we're able to track the rocket with our cameras on the ground. Now less than 3 minutes to lift off.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
With that fueling milestone just noted by SpaceX, we are now waiting for Stage 2 LOX load to be complete. That's coming up now less than 30 seconds. Should be hearing that call from SpaceX as well. Taking a look at the live chat real quick. Want to thank Nick Goj for our $2 super chat. Welcome in CP Skydive, joining us the channel membership at the pad leader level. And a big thanks to David Booth for a $10 super chat. Appreciate you all.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And with that, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The venting that you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts. They are purging the liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Gas launch closeouts has started.
Hear that call out from SpaceX. As we're now just about a minute before liftoff, we're going to go ahead and pause from reading any further comments from the live section for now, but we'll return to that on the other side of the launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're just waiting for the SpaceX launch director to give their thumbs up. We'll be ready to see this Falcon fly. Now 40 seconds out.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And with that clearance from the launch director, we do have a go-ahead for the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, now in less than 30 seconds. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-13 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Power and telemetry nominal.
We're now a little more than a minute into this flight. Falcon 9 approaching max key. Point of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Some good work by the tracking team today. As we come up on the second minute of the flight, we're going to see a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cut off at about T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation a few seconds later. Second stage engine starter, SES-1, about T plus 2 minutes and 36 seconds. And then the fairing deployment about a minute or so after that.
MVAC chill underway.
The call there thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine. You see MECO. Stage separation. Second stage engine start.
Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
Good call from the SpaceX teams. Now, if you look at the big box and see the payload fairings have also deployed, reflecting against the glint of the sun.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Some good lighting here. This tracking view from Chuck Briggs catching all four elements of the flight right now, the two halves of the payload fairings, but the first and the second stages now flying independently of each other. Falcon 9 first stage, of course, is making its way down towards the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. Well, the upper stage will continue on with the 23 Starlink satellites in tow. Now approaching the 4th minute into flight. Coming up, the next mission milestones we're going to be looking for begin at the 6-minute 5-second mark with the entry burn beginning. That burn lasting about 23 seconds in total. If the cloud conditions are right, we might be able to catch that with our cameras on the ground, although it is quite bright here in the afternoon of Wednesday, October 30th. So may or may not be able to see the entry burn from the ground, but we'll be able to bring you those views from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Some gorgeous views of the Atlantic Ocean below and the Falcon 9 first stage camera view, as well as from the second stage on the right-hand side of your screen. Now coming up on 5 minutes in flight in real time. Again, the time you're seeing from SpaceX at the bottom of your screen coming in on a slight delay, hence the difference between these two clocks. There's a view from the inner stage on the Falcon 9's first stage booster. Now less than 30 seconds away from the start of that first stage entry burn beginning. That burn set to begin in just about 10 seconds from now in real time. So our cameras are scanning the skies, seeing if we can catch a glimpse for that here in just a few seconds. And again, if we are able to spot it, we'll be sure to bring it to you. Entry burn should be underway now.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
The entry burn concluding in real time. We're still seeing it there on the SpaceX feed coming in on a slight delay.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Good conclusion of the entry burn. You can see from the telemetry data on the Falcon 9's first stage, the speedometer, the rocket slowing down quite dramatically. SpaceX uses 3 of its Merlin engines on the base of the first stage for that entry burn. It will now rely predominantly for a while on atmospheric drag to slow the first stage down even further as it prepares for the landing burn using just 1 of the Merlin engines. You can see a little oscillation on those hypersonic grid fins as well. These winglets help steer the booster back towards the drone ship.
Stage 1 transonic.
Good call that the Falcon 9 first stage is now traveling below the speed of sound, making its way down towards shortfall gravitas drone ship. That landing burn set to begin in about 10 seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And with that,
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
B-1078 has now safely touched down on the drone ship, completing its 14th flight.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with those good callouts from SpaceX, the Falcon 9 upper stage now well on its way to deliver those 23 Starlink satellites. Next up is the second stage engine ignition again, coming up at about T plus 54 minutes, 48 seconds. There'll be a 1 second burn to circularize the orbit of that upper stage, preparing for the Starlink satellite to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, 41 seconds into this mission. With a good liftoff and landing of that first stage booster, let's go ahead and turn now to the mission stats as they currently stand. But briefly want to thank Ebony Locks for a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Ebony, who says, thanks, made my day. We're very happy to be a part of what sounds like it's been a good day for you. Closing things out, here's where we stand for SpaceX. This, again, marking the 14th flight. The Falcon 9 booster, tail number B1078 in the SpaceX fleet. This marked the 388th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 103rd Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was also the 333rd Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 105th orbital launch of the year so far, including 2 Falcon Heavy rockets. This also was the 123rd SpaceX orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 213th orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 268th overall orbital launch from this pad. Taking a look at the bar chart here, again for Falcon rockets, now standing at 105, including all the Falcon 9s and the 2 Falcon Heavies. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 83rd booster landing successfully on a shortfall of gravitas. This was the 284th SpaceX drone ship landing and the 261st overall SpaceX booster landing as well. Finally, some industry stats on the year. This was the 74th orbital launch from Florida, the 112th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 122nd orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, the 199th orbital launch attempt from around the world. There have been 6 launch failures on the year, so here's where our pie chart now currently stands. The U.S. at 122 launches so far, China with 52, Russia with 11, Japan with 5, Iran and North Korea with 3 apiece, European Space Agency with 2, looking for the launch of its Vega C rocket, coming up, launch number 3 so far in that rocket's program history. In North Korea with 1 launch attempt, 1 launch failure. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wind things up for today on a live launch front. However, we're not quite done yet. I'll go ahead for those of you who are still sticking around with us to the very, very end of this live launch coverage stream, let you know that we've got some new content coming up on the channel here probably within the next hour or so, if I had to put a timestamp on it. Been working on a video from our Starbase coverage, looking ahead to flight number 6, but also looking back on flight 5 through the lens of NASA's Human Landing System program, since the Starship rocket will be used to bring astronauts down to the moon through the Artemis missions 3 and 4, and likely future ones as well further down the road. So we had the opportunity to talk with the Deputy Program Manager for the HLS Program Office, which is based at Marshall Space Flight Center. So be sure to look for that coming to the channel again, probably within the next hour or so here. So if you're not already subscribed to Spaceflight Now, now's a good time to do so. We'll have a little bit of members content coming out of that as well. So if you're not already a channel member, now's a good time to join with channel membership so you have access to that video when it drops too. As a reminder, channel membership makes a big difference, especially as we're gearing up towards our coverage of the first launch of Blue Origin's New Glenn, hoping to bring you robust 24-hour live coverage of that as we do with pads 39A and B, looking to build out our infrastructure here. And so channel membership will go a long way towards that. We certainly appreciate your support in helping to bring you more robust coverage of the happenings here on the Space Coast. Want to quickly thank as well Dar for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Dar. Says great stream. And to channel member Patty Chichil for a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Patty. Says mods doing what they do. Thank you, Spaceflight Now crew, and the best coverage. Speaking of that crew, I want to give them their flowers. Thanks, of course, to the aforementioned moderators in the live chat. So thanks to Astro Jen, Astro Joe, and Mark Otto, and Callistia Lee for helping us out. Also want to thank our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions for providing tracking assistance with this mission today. Thanks to our photographers, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane, for their launch photography, and Adam for his tracking work as well. You can find the fellows again on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. Those are both on X. Be sure to follow Spaceflight Now if you're not already. You can also find us on Threads and Facebook. Big thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the broadcast here today. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you're watching this launch from. If you made it to the end, we certainly appreciate you sticking it out with us, and we hope to see you again very soon. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. We are looking towards probably the launch of CRS, or Commercial Resupply Services number 31, cargo and science mission up to the International Space Station. Could very well be our next launch, that looking to lift off no earlier than Monday, November 4th. One last bit of housekeeping here for all of those here in the United States. Don't forget, Sunday is the day you got to turn those clocks back. When we shift from Eastern Daylight Time to Eastern Savings Time, EST, it's coming back. I know the days are getting shorter. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, with that last reminder, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.